Hello, hello, everyone. Today I have a treat for all of you. We have with us today Michelle Walters. Now, what's interesting about talking with her is that I went through her website, and I'll give you the link and everything else, but I went through her website and I started reading. She has these buttons on her website: home, classes, and events. So I started reading about her classes. Awesome classes, by the way. I really encourage all of you to sign up. And I'm like really impressed, right? And then I go back to the homepage and there's like another button: books. Wow, she's an author, two books. I started reading about the books. Dude, these books are awesome. And then I go into the tab that says services, and I'm reading about all the things that she does and all of this. Then I go back to the homepage and it says more. And I go, there's more. There's more to Michelle Walters. It's like, all these different things, all these different dimensions to who she is. So I'm so happy, so honored, and so proud to be able to share a moment with Michelle. And I think that by the end of this conversation, all of you listening to us right now will be equally impressed. And I'm hoping that you can all reach out to her and talk some more and continue the conversation. And hopefully we can all grow together. So, Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for even wanting and conceding us a moment of your time. I mean, just looking at your website, I know you're really, really busy. So thank you for being here. It's an honor.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Dr. Flavio. I listened to your show and I thought, oh, this is a good show. I I I think I resonate with this kind of person. I would love to be on, and I'm delighted to be here today.
Wow, it's an honor. Absolutely. So, Michelle, I want to start with something, if that's okay with you. And as always, if I ask you anything that you don't want to get into, that's all right. We can move on. But I'm curious because you say here on your website that your ability, you talk a little bit about what you do, but then in the second paragraph on your story here, you talk about, and I'm reading, my ability to do this comes from my both personal and professional experience. Then you say, I've been through the ringer personally, and I'm something of an empath. So I'm wondering if you could share with us what do you mean by I've been through the ringer
Yeah,
personally?
I would be happy to. I was a person very blessed to have a good childhood, loving parents, plenty to eat, vacations, lots of things that I feel grateful for. For whatever reason, I have had two life partners who both uh, died kind of young, um, and and one of them, I guess you could see coming, and the other one really sort of took me by surprise. But there aren't that many people I've met my age who are essentially twice widowed, and that's the ringer that I was referring to when I wrote that particular paragraph. So I married my husband, Bruce, in the year 2000. And this is the one that you might have seen coming because Bruce was a wonderful, wonderful man, but he was born with cystic fibrosis. And he received a lung transplant shortly after we were married. But I like to tell people that organ transplants are fabulous, but it's like somebody hands you an extension cord and they don't tell you if it's a foot long or 100 feet long. You don't know how long you got. I mean, none of us do really. But so Bruce did really well after his transplant. We had a kid. We relocated to Dallas for work. And then Bruce had a significant stroke and spent about 4 years needing a lot of care for his stroke.
Mhm.
So it was, I didn't see it going that way, but it was sad at the point when Bruce finally did transition. It felt like he was letting go of a body that just didn't work. But it was still very, very sad. And a few years passed, and I met a wonderful man, a man who just swept me off my feet, close to
Mhm.
love at first sight, just dreamy. And I thought, okay, this time I'm picking a guy who's healthy because I already did that before and I don't want to do that again. And so my second partner, Scott, was healthy and loving and tall and handsome and smart and all the things. And then 3 years into our relationship, Scott was diagnosed with a terminal blood disease. It's a really rare one. No one's ever heard of it. But he got chemo and sort of did the things trying to get better. Eventually, his kidneys failed. He also had a stroke, and he passed away in 2021. And so, and as I know you know, and many of your listeners know, like when you're grieving, grieving has a way of bringing up all the grieving from before. And so it really did feel like I was going through the ringer in terms of processing the pain of my partner's early demise. Um, about that time, I met my grief therapist, another hypnotherapist who was teaching at my hypnotherapy school, and he helped me a lot. I did a lot of personal growth. I think a lot of the achievements you mentioned, my books, my podcast, a lot of those things are all ways that I have helped kind of claw myself up to a better place. And now I focus my time and effort on finding people to help. I think I'm a very resilient person. While I can fall down, I don't usually stay down. I have a sunny nature, and I like to find my way back up again. I'm an optimist at heart.
Wow, Michelle, first of all, sorry for your losses. And, and I know it's tough, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the ages are, it's always a tough one. And also thank you for sharing the part of your life with all of us because, it's such a deep thing, I suppose, right? Two partners. I mean, it's such a big deal. And I thank you so much for your candor, for your openness, for your sincerity, for your willingness to share out of your heart. So I really thank you for that. And I find it remarkably admirable, exactly the word that you use, the resiliency, your ability to get up the next day. I mean, I know it's not the next day, but, get up for the next chapter of your life and to build everything that you have built so far. And you're still going full steam. So I'm sure that you're just getting started. But about that, you have a background in corporate America. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
What did you do? What was that like?
So I got an MBA in Seattle, Washington, and then I was hired by a digital marketing company. Well, they were a marketing company just going digital. This was the mid 90s, and spent over 20 years working primarily for corporate clients. Sometimes I would work directly for the corporation. Sometimes I worked for an advertising agency or creative agency in support of the client's work. I worked in tons and tons of different things. I worked in energy, I worked in consumer packaged goods, I worked in fintech, I worked in pharmaceuticals. I bounced around all over the place. Um, what I liked about that work,
So, sorry, just right here. Did you say thin tech?
oh, fintech, like financial
Oh,
technology,
oh, oh, okay.
banks
Sorry.
and investments, that kind of thing.
Okay. Sorry.
Um, I what I liked about that work is that it was very creative and it was very persuasive. And that is a big part of the work I do now in terms of my work with my hypnotherapy, my work with my books, my work with my marketing clients. Um, it's what I'm passionate about, is what I was born good at. And that's what I like to do. It has been a big transition to move from the world of corporate to the world of solopreneur, small business. Things are very different. The approach to winning business is different. The approach to marketing is different. Um, but it's all part of kind of that general field that I so love.
Yeah, it's interesting because, for those of you who have not met Michelle before, Michelle is a hypnotherapist as well as I am. And I remember the very first time I went to a hypnotherapy conference in Atlanta, Georgia, years ago. I've been doing this for 29 years. This was in the very beginning. I go to a couple of conferences every year, but the very first one I attended, I noticed that as soon as I walked in and I saw the people, there was this general feeling of it was beyond camaraderie, professional courtesy. It was beyond all of that. It was almost as if all these people loved each other. I'm exaggerating a little, but not much. It was like such a family feeling, you know? And that really impressed me. And I've carried that feeling throughout my 29 years doing hypnotherapy. Every time I meet a fellow hypnotherapist, it's like we speak the same language. I feel so comfortable because we do kind of the same thing on a day in, day out basis. And it's like, it's the kind of work that only people who do it every day kind of get it. You know, the day to day, the nitty gritty of this work is very, very specific and kind of different. Would you agree with that, or do you think it's
It is
conventional like your
different.
day at the
I
office?
haven't had the joy yet of going to a big conference.
Oh,
I've applied to be a speaker at one next year, so maybe they'll take me. Um, but I hear you in terms of understanding kind of like wow, we've all been to the same kind of school, we all
yeah.
do the same kind of work, we have some similarities in terms of our beliefs, and I would say also a lot of curiosity in
Yeah.
how each person does their work, you know? Um, because while I think a lot of the premises that hypnotherapists work with are essentially the same, the way that you're going to handle a client versus the way that I'm going to handle a client are going to be slightly different. And that's the nature of it. The other thing I love about my work in hypnotherapy is it really empowers my intuition. When I
Hmm.
first started working in hypnosis, and I think this is common for a lot of beginning hypnotherapists, I wanted to pull out my school books and my scripts and do what I was taught to do. And while that is all incorporated in my work with clients, I find now that my clients get the best results if I weave into our sessions a lot of my intuition. What am I hearing in my inner voices that would be just the right thing to say to this client, just the right approach to investigate some belief or problem? And I love that, that being tied into my intuition is not something that was well well beloved or encouraged in my corporate world. And so it's fun to be in a place where I can I can get in touch with those directions. I love that part.
Yeah. Not only getting touch, but actually it works in your favor, right? I think it makes you a better hypnotherapist
Yes,
to have some
absolutely.
degree of access to your own unconscious, let's put it that way. And that brings me right into the other thing I wanted to ask you, because the last part of the paragraph that I read a moment ago says, you speak of being an empath. So I wanted to get into that a little bit. So intuition and and empathy, or being an empath. Is it the same thing? Is it not? Why don't you give us an
Yeah,
idea?
I guess I think of them as being more or less the same thing.
Okay.
Um, I I had some training in developing my intuition before I even got it in my head to go to hypnotherapy school, and
Mhm.
loved that work and did, some classes and fairs and that kind of a thing, doing readings for people and loved that work, but knew that it just wasn't quite me. It wasn't exactly right. And then I have a funny story about how I became a hypnotherapist. I read a novel by one of my favorite authors called The Hypnotist Love Story. And I read this book about this hypnotherapist who lived in Sydney, Australia. And I thought, that's so cool. I want to do that. And
And who is your favorite author?
this author is named Leanne Moriarty. She's an
Okay.
Australian author, and she's
Okay.
written a lot of great books. And this is one of her smaller books. But I read it and I was like, I have to do this. And so I Googled it and found a school I could go to on the weekends and did my training. And then during the pandemic, when life just kind of, for me, my partner was sick and passed away, and um, it just seemed like the one time I was ever going to get a chance to really change careers. I
Yeah.
decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm very blessed. I've found lots of interesting, fascinating clients that I've been able to help. I have a good voice for it. The intuition work turned out to be really helpful in terms of being confident that this is worthy of bringing into my sessions, and it's made for a lot of deep healing and excellent results.
So you got inspired by a book. That's fabulous. I mean, you sort of changed your whole life, you got
Yeah.
into this new profession and all based on the inspiration that you received from a book. I would think that books are really dear and precious to you, and I'm not surprised that you became an author. How did that come about? As a writer, as an author yourself, how did that come about?
Well, my first book is here I'll show your but my first book is called An Alignment of Spirit, Finding Work You Love. It
Hmm.
is kind of a law of attraction book, a book about manifesting. I learned a lot from one of my great teachers who I never thought of as being a hypnotherapist, but technically she was. And she taught me a lot about the spiritual nature of things, how to manifest things, how to direct your thoughts, how to let go of thoughts that are getting in the way or not helpful. And I just felt called to kind of string together science and studies and personal stories and a process that I felt was a great process that a lot of people should learn and know about, because I think a lot of people are skeptical of being able to bring things into your life when really there are some. I mean, it's not a perfect science. We don't live in a universe where you can think, I want a pink elephant and it just shows up. That's not where we live. But there are a lot of great practices in terms of getting your thinking right to be able to bring the things into your life that you want to. So I felt called to write that book. So I wrote that book. And then last year I did some training with the Maxwell Institute. They're a leadership company. They're in Florida. And I flew to Florida and I got certified. And then I thought, oh, if I'm going to do this leadership thing, I should write a book. So I wrote a book called The ABCs of Conscious Leadership, um, because I thought, we need some more leadership books that are really easy and approachable and help people remember what are the traits of conscious leaders and how to make them easy and approachable. So my book goes through the alphabet, A to Z, and for each letter, it identifies a trait that matches the letter and has a personal story from me. And it has a famous person and his or her story. Well, actually, they're not all people. I should take that back. A famous character, let's say, who embodies that trait so that you can help remember all of these things. As you know from your work in hypnosis, kind of the more ideas you can string together, the better they sit. So, for example, A is for authenticity, and I tell my story about authenticity, and then the person I identify for authenticity is Abraham Lincoln, and it goes all the way to the letter Z. So it's a fun little book for people who are maybe wanting to amp up their leadership skills and knowledge a little bit in a way that's very, very easy. Because you can just read one letter a day. Like you don't have to read the whole book, right? It's easy to start and stop.
So it's interesting because leadership, when we think of the word leadership, we think of a politician, a president, or maybe a corporate manager, the president, the CEO, that type of thing. But do you include in your definition of leader also somebody like a father or a mother or a teacher?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. People are leaders of themselves and
Okay.
leaders of their families, of their church communities, of there are leaders all over the place.
Okay.
And one of the leaders in my in my examples is a dog. Because I can make a good case as to why this dog is showing this leadership trait, right? Um, Leadership is everywhere, and I guess maybe that's also part of what I was fascinated about as I put this book together. Because I think a lot of times people I know me, for one, at times in my life, have been like, oh, I couldn't be a leader. I'm just, I'm just a follower. I'm not somebody with ideas or that kind of a thing. Well, I was also a mom. I was still a mom. Um, Led teams, led women's groups to organize lunch or a fundraiser. All of these are leadership opportunities. And I want to encourage people to be able to see themselves as leaders, even at moments that, you might not think of yourself so much that way.
And those moments when we don't think of ourselves that way, is it because of is it because of the situation we're in, or is it because we broke down internally? What do you mean by when we don't think of ourselves that way?
Well,
I
there's certainly
the
been times in
scenario.
my life where I didn't think of myself as a leader, and yet it
Okay.
was like, oh, wait, I'm a mom. I have a disabled husband. I
Okay.
I I am figuring out how to pay the mortgage and get everybody to their appointments. And, while you may not think of that stuff as a leader, there has to be somebody who's the initiator who makes it happen.
Makes it happen. Yeah.
That's a form of leadership, and it's clearly not the same thing as being the governor of your state or
Yeah.
running your company of 500 people. It's a different kind of thing, but it's still important and valuable, and I want people to recognize that in themselves.
So is that what you mean by conscience leadership? In other
What
words,
I meant by conscious leadership, the reason why I put the word conscious in the title is that I do feel that we have some leaders in America today that are not really thinking of other people. They're
mm,
not really being very conscious. They're not they're not considering how to be thoughtful of others. And I wanted to distinguish my book as part of what I believe is conscious is being thoughtful of other people. I mean, there are terrible people from history who maybe led their country or was a general in a war or something, and they weren't all conscious. They weren't all thoughtful of of uh, of the community of humanity.
yeah, yeah, I get what you mean now. Okay. So speaking of hypnotherapy, going back to the topic of hypnotherapy, what is your, how would you explain what you do to a person who either never heard of hypnotherapy, and there are some people, or a person who says, oh, the hypnosis thing, I know what you mean, you make people bark like a dog, that kind of response. How would you explain it? What is it that you do? Like,
I
suppose,
would say, yeah, the way I most typically explain hypnotherapy is that it is a natural process
mm,
that guides an individual to dial down certain parts of their brain, of their way of thinking, and that in that process, they become more open to suggestion, more focused, and less associated with their body, so as to be able to imagine doing things that they might not have been able to imagine doing before.
okay,
And it is a consensual process. So anybody who's flapping their wings or barking like a dog is doing so because they have consented to do so. And it is extremely powerful at changing thought processes, behaviors, that kind of a thing. I've had great success with people for a wide variety of problems. People trying to stop with tics. I had a client who had been pulling out her hair for 50 plus years, and I got her to stop. I've had people who came to see me for terrible phobias that were really impacting their life. That by working in hypnosis, we identified a reason as to why that might have shown up in the client's life and eliminated it. It's amazing how many situations hypnotherapy can be helpful for. Now, does it work all the time for everybody? No, but nothing does.
yeah, yes. Is there a particular type of client that you prefer to work with in terms of subject? What I mean is weight loss, smoking, that kind of thing. Is there a particular topic, I should say, that you prefer or not? Or
There
you're
isn't
open
really a
to?
particular topic. Most of my clients are, I'd say, between 30 and 65.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are professional. They have a job doing something. I do love helping people with work-related issues. People maybe who've
Mm-hmm.
been out of work and are now going back to work, or people who have a phobia of public speaking, who realize that that's going to enable their career more. So I do really love working in that arena. I guess because I like business, I like work. But I don't, I know plenty of hypnotherapists who specialize. They just do smoking or they just do weight loss. I'm not at that point. I like working with a mix of people. Keeps my day interesting.
Yeah, yes. And conversely, is there a type of situation you would not work with?
I don't think I would work with someone uh for like military or war related issues.
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
not well versed in that field. I
Hmm.
think I would refer someone out for that. And I have had one or two people ask me for services that I just didn't feel comfortable with. So I found other places to send people along to. But for the most part, I've worked on some unusual topics. I had clients last year for morning sickness and erectile dysfunction, both of which we made enormous headway on. The gentleman is now married, so I consider that a success.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Morning sickness in the context of pregnancy or
morning sickness in the context of pregnancy,
yeah, okay.
which I think sort of came there. There were some background issues relating to gastrointestinal issues and anxiety that made the morning sickness really
Sure.
extreme. And the hypnosis proved helpful.
Absolutely. Tell me your wildest hypnotherapy story.
My
I'm sure you have
wildest
one of those
story.
that you go, oh, that guy or that woman, whatever. Tell me a
Well, I
wild.
do like the story about a lady that I helped get over her fear of bumblebees.
Okay.
So she came to see me and she was like, I've been terrified of bumblebees my entire life. I don't know why. I've never been stung, but and she would run from the car door to my office because she was afraid she'd get stung between the car and the office. Like this was pretty bad. She couldn't go to her boyfriend's picnic. She couldn't do any of this stuff. Well, so we worked um, on this for a couple months, not too long. But in her regression session, we did a session to go back and find out where this was coming from, what idea, dream, memory, thought process had led to this tremendous bee phobia. She she had a vision, she remembered, she her story was that she was a young girl sitting on a bench in a small garden with her mother. And in the garden, there was lavender and bumblebees and roses and this kind of a thing. And while she was sitting there on the bench, her mother told her that her big sister, who was 10 years older, was upstairs. They were at a hospital. This was a hospital garden. And the big sister was getting a life-saving surgery for her kidneys. And there was a possibility that her big sister wasn't going to make it and she would die.
Oh,
And so what we put together was that this little girl transferred that fear that her big sister was going to die to those bumblebees in the garden. And once she had this story and she could say, my fear of bumblebees came because I was so afraid my big sister was going to die, and I transferred that fear over there. I now look at this differently. Those bumblebees had nothing to do with what was happening to my big sister. I made this connection when there doesn't need to be a connection here. It doesn't make sense anymore. And so she was able to get past it and go with her boyfriend to the picnic and not run between the house and the front door. And she's very funny. She's like, well, I'm still not going hiking. I still don't want to be outdoors. But the whole point was like her life really opened up because she can be outdoors, at least for some periods of time. And that's a huge change when you've really resisted being outdoors in any way. I love
Yeah,
the outdoors. So to me, I'm
yeah,
like, this is fabulous.
yeah. I think that's a fascinating example of what the early psychoanalysts about 120 years ago were discussing. They kept saying the whole point of psychoanalysis is to take the unconscious and make it conscious. And that's exactly what you described there. When
Yep.
we don't have an explanation for why I am the way that I am, then we go nuts. But the moment that we see it and we get it and we have an explanation, it's like, okay, now I'm conscious of the unconscious. I can relax. It's not about the bees. Like we can actually change. And that's a fascinating story. Michelle, have you ever been scared during a session?
I would not say that I have.
Okay.
I mean, I have had some sessions where um that's not true. Um, I haven't been scared since I started doing hypnosis in my practice professionally. But I do
Okay.
recall a time during hypnotherapy school when we were doing some sort of exercise and a scary scene appeared in my head um,
Mm.
that I don't, wasn't intentional. It's just my brain went into a scary place and I was like, "Oh, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't this isn't good for me." And I did what people do when they want to get out of hypnosis. I opened my eyes and woke myself up. Um, and just sat quietly until the remainder of the class finished the session. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but I do remember it happening. That just something weird popped into my head, and that was the best way for me to get rid of it that day.
Beautiful. And what about past lives? What's your take on past lives? As a hypnotist, I think that question comes up frequently. What's your take on the whole subject?
My take on it is if somebody goes into a past life, that's where they needed to go.
Okay.
Uh, I do I believe that they exist? I don't know. I don't know if they're real or imaginary, but what I do know is that when they do come up and you heal that situation, it frequently resolves whatever's going on in today's life. So a classmate of mine at hypnotherapy school was an Indian guy, so he had a culture of believing in past lives.
Mhm.
He had been afraid of heights forever, and he went to see a famous hypnotherapist who focused on past lives. And my friend went into a trance state and saw himself standing on the side of a cliff, and then noticed that he wasn't wearing modern day clothes. He was wearing clothes from centuries past. So, okay, so this is a past life. My friend interprets this as I'm standing on a cliff. And then there was a woman next to him. A woman next to him appeared. She was also wearing these old clothes. And he realized she was his wife. And then in the vision, the wife pushed him off the cliff. He fell off the cliff and died. And my friend and his hypnotherapist interpreted this story as, well, I had a past life with a wife who pushed me off a cliff. She's not here. I don't have to be afraid anymore. And his fear of heights dissipated. And you can say, well, was there really a past life? Was there really a wife? I don't know. The point of the matter is that he's not afraid of heights anymore.
Right, right.
And no one has been harmed in this explanation and story.
Correct,
I,
correct.
I so are they real? Are they imaginary? I don't know, but I don't think it matters. I think that the human brain is always searching for meaning. And if this is a way to develop a story with meaning, my wife pushed me off the cliff, that's why I'm afraid, so be it.
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant way to explain. I really thank you for that. The idea that clinically, it does not matter if it's real or not, if the person gets better through, let's just pretend it's a metaphor. And if through the metaphor they got better, then that's what the desired clinical outcome was, and we achieved the outcome, right? So in this case, the person is no longer afraid of heights, no longer acrophobic. So we have a success there, a therapeutic success. That's awesome. And it's really not up to our profession, I think, to discern whether or not this stuff is real, right? I mean, maybe the theologians or some other people can figure that out. But I think you explained it beautifully well. But I am curious about this other side of your work, which has to do with the mystical, because if I understood correctly, you have a partnership with someone who identifies as a mystic, right? So, in
Yep.
that context, I suppose the idea of a past life is somewhat commonplace in the mystical context, is it not?
Yes, it is. It is. She's
Okay.
actually my podcast partner, as Cynthia, is actually the gal who was my intuition teacher back in the day. And she has a forte and a practice that is very spiritual based, very intuition based. She has guides that she's very connected to and gets messages from all the time. And I believe they exist. Um, I don't know exactly how that works, and but I do believe it. I do believe that there are just things that are um, synchronistic. That's the word I'm looking for. Synchronistic in ways that statistics cannot explain.
I see.
And I and I see it all the time in my clients. You know, they'll be in a state of trance and they'll suddenly be speaking to grandma or um, people who are not here. And I hear it in myself, you know. Sometimes I was at a concert a few weeks ago and just immediately felt the presence of my past partner. Um, there is a mystical element to all of this. But what I do tell clients is that, if they are skeptical, that's not the way they look at the world. Hypnotherapy still works. Um, it still works, but I have seen it work even better or more quickly, I might say, for the folks who are more connected to those ideas, more ready to open up that part of their self and their imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. So, your podcast, what is, tell us a little bit about that. I love the title, by the way. Tell us a
Well, we
little
had
bit
another
about it.
title. It was originally called It's All Connected because
Okay.
we both believe that everything is all connected, but it wasn't good for search. People didn't know what we were talking about. So we switched the title pretty early on to the new title, which is Mind Power, because I'm my Instagram handle, my YouTube, it's called Mind Power Junkie. So I'm the Mind Power. And then Cynthia is the Mystic. And some of the episodes are me and Cynthia talking about intuition or empowerment movies. And many of the episodes are interviewing guests with all kinds of different expertise. So, we've had women who did palm readings, we've had a ghost hunter, we've had a
Mhm.
financial planner and a real estate person. Um, so we have a wide range of topics, but what we do like to talk about is kind of, positivity, connecting with your spirit, being open-minded, um, and encouraging people to recognize that, you have answers. Some of the answers you're going to find in life come from other people, and some of them come from yourself or your higher self.
Mhm. How beautiful. So, how can someone get a hold of you? I know you have a beautiful website, by the way. The colors that you chose are fabulous. You have a background in marketing. Did you do your website
I
yourself?
did. I did it all myself.
Oh gosh, it's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
it's
I noticed.
amazing to me. I mean, I started doing marketing and digital marketing in the 70s. It would take a dozen people to make a website. Now, if you know what you're doing, you can make a website yourself. Um,
Yeah.
but I do encourage people to get help with their websites if you haven't built one before. Um, the technology is not hard, but it's something you might want people to learn about. The best
Mhm.
way for people to get a hold of me is through my website. So my website is michellewalters.net. And as Dr. Flavio mentioned, you can go to the classes page or the books page or the podcast page and learn more about these various things I do.
And speaking of classes, I noticed you have a class coming up on Friday. Today, we're recording this on a Wednesday, the 8th of October. But on the 10th of October, there's a class, right? Can you tell us
Yep.
what's going to happen today?
Absolutely. So the class I'm putting on Friday, October 10th, it's a class I do every month. So if you look on my classes page, you'll see the next few dates for the next few months on that page. I call it Nourish and Flourish, because I do it at lunchtime on a Friday, my lunchtime on a Friday, which is 12 p.m. Pacific, and it's a free hypnotherapy session for a group. So I spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes talking about what is hypnosis, what does it feel like, a little bit about me and my services. And then I lead the group in a very general topic and an online hypnosis session. So the topic changes every month. I think, what did I do? I forgot what I did last month. But sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's gratitude, sometimes it's love. It changes and it repeats. But people like to come. I have many regulars who come every month. And you can just come by using the button at the right time if you want to do it that way. You can also go and if you search for Michelle Walters on Eventbrite, you'll find it on Eventbrite and you can sign up on Eventbrite and I'll make sure you get an invitation and a reminder.
Beautiful. Folks, I've noticed her website is awesome, by the way, and she did it herself. I'm so happy for you. And here, when you go on her website, it's called michellewalters.net. And when you go on it, there's a tab on the top that says classes and events. And you're going to be impressed because this one class that she described is not the only one that she offers. There's another one called SOS, Stop Eating Sugar, right? And that, okay. And then
I
there's,
offer that one a few times a year. I haven't updated it now. The
yeah, I
next
see
the next edition will be in January.
in
Um,
Jan,
but I do
which,
a special class on helping people. Part of my background we haven't talked about is also in decision making. So for the sugar class, about half of it is about making good decisions about sugar, and then the second half is a hypnotherapy to help you get past that sugar addiction.
which is awesome. In January, right after the holidays, when we all eat too much sugar and so forth, I think this is going to be beautiful. I want to be there. But she also does a marketing class. Look, 5 marketing success tips for solopreneurs and small businesses. I mean, November 19th coming up. So you have time to join this one. This is absolutely awesome. And this one says here for free. I mean, she's so awesome, generous. She's offering all of this wisdom, all of this knowledge. Then she has another one, big marketing, small business tips you want to use. And drop a fear, make your decision. Another one, the 15 invaluable laws of growth, a lunch and learn and mastermind, and on and on and on. I mean, what a fountain of knowledge, wisdom, of help. What a resource, Michelle Walters. So, folks, check this website out and let me know what you think. I think this is absolutely awesome. And on top of that, she does one more thing that I find awesome. She has a consultation where you can call her up. It says right here, book right now, a free 30-minute consult. And you can actually speak with her and decide if you want to work with her on a particular project. And she has this breadth of knowledge and experiences, corporate marketing, digital marketing. She mentioned earlier that she uses hypnotherapy to help people overcome fear of speaking and to grow in their careers. And I mean, such a valuable resource, Michelle Walters. So michellewalters.net is the best way to get in touch with her. And if you just want to, or not just, but if you want to listen to the podcast as well, it's Mind Power Meets Mystic. What a
That's right.
beautiful title. I love that title. And they talk about all kinds of things in that podcast. So this is absolutely awesome. There's a button here on her website that says get freebies, right? So she has some gifts for you. Explore this website. I think you're going to be impressed, and you can tell me later what you think. But Michelle, this is awesome. I'm so delighted that we had an opportunity to get to know one another. And I haven't been in California for a while, but next time I go, I'm going to look you up. I want to meet you in person, and
I would love that.
so we can have a cup of coffee and continue this conversation. Yeah. And likewise, if you come to Florida, let me know before you come so that we can plan on something.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
so much, Dr. Flavia. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate
one
it.
more thing before we go, one more thing. I want you to share with our audience, what is your one piece of wisdom or one phrase or one quote or one idea or one thought that you want to leave us with?
One
Anything.
of my favorite, so in high school, I had the honor of playing Auntie Mame in the show Auntie Mame. And one of her quotes is, "Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death." Live.
Wow.
So
Wow.
go find your banquet.
Wow. What a beautiful way to look at it. And folks, if you feel that life is a banquet, but you're not partaking of your share of this banquet, call Michelle Walters. She'll help you. She'll help you. She'll help you get your share that you deserve. It's your birthright.
Absolutely. People
So, Mich-
deserve to have life be a banquet.
absolutely. Thank you so much. What a blessing it is to
Thank
meet
you
you.
so
Thank you
much.
so much. And we'll talk soon.
Very good. Thank you.